Hey everyone, welcome back. My name's Constantine, Pringlesman123 on the Discord, and today we got another deck profile for you. Here with John Ash, who got 9th place with his Life Smiling Titan deck at the Denver Regional. John, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Nice. I'm good. And this Smiling deck looks awesome, so I'm super excited to hear more about it. And just kind of jumping into it, going into the event, what was it that made you pick Smiling Titan as your deck of choice for the event?
Well, I had actually been out of the game for quite a while. Jesse from Roanoke had been sending me constant week updates on what he'd been running at the locals.
Nice.
And he asked me to come on this trip with him. And of all the deck lists he showed me, this one had the lowest number of words on the cards. And I thought that was really important if you're kind of brushing off the cobwebs and you want to do well at a big event. Probably the least memorization possible will get you farther.
Yeah, keep it simple. Nice.
Yeah.
And so going off of that, what's the game plan for this list? How exactly are we winning the game with a Smiling Titan?
We're looking to build really hard turn one and then swing with one of these giant, I would say Haymaker, but I know that's a card in the game, but just these giant attacks that when you put the speed pump on them, they're almost guaranteed to land for 35 to 50% of their health on turn one.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular list, because I knew most of the foundations were blanks just for the check value, my survival strategy was to try and blow up as many foundations as possible to make it so the crackback was as light as possible so that I could hopefully turn 3, turn 4 them, whatever I could reasonably get away with.
Yeah, so denying their resources while hitting them in the face. Very, very powerful strategy.
Yeah, very few people could block a turn 1 Colossal Titan's destructive power. It just they're down 2 foundations. It's 12 speed or so.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good part to segue into the deck list itself. Starting with this attack.
It seems like it's crazy good. Since your foundations aren't helping you do very much, you need every attack to do 2 or 3 things, ideally.
Mm-hmm.
This one kind of did it all. It is a big commitment for 9 diff, but the fact that it shifts into a foundation, which I always shift to the foundation just to try and recoup some of that initial turn 1 tap down you have to do to swing these big attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And the backside actually ended up being pretty game determinative a lot of the time.
It did. That extra 2 damage was helping you close out games?
It was. I found out in a later round that there was kind of like a combo where I would hit with like a Beast Titan's Call, burn them for 2. Off the mill for the Beast Titan's Call, I would hit another Colossus Titan's destructive power. The trigger window is still open, so you can then burn them for another 2. So, in situations where people ran out of cards in hand and I threw Beast Titan's Call as my last attack for the turn, it would sometimes clock in for like 16 damage. Jesus. And it's a good EX outlet as well, so it pretty reliably got in for that amount. So,
yeah, sounds like a really good way to close out the game. And then I guess moving on with Beast Titan's Call, can you talk more about this card in your deck? Because it seemed to be a pretty strong linchpin at a 4 of.
Yeah, this was one of the cards I bought 4 of from the vendor the day of, just because I liked it better than some of the options that were originally in the deck that was handed to me. The deck was pretty lacking in momentum outlets. Let's see. I believe it's Defending the City. No, what is it? Dangerous Combatants, I think it is, from the Foundations. Nope.
Oh, Sins of the Past?
Tried. I'm trying to Last Second Rescue. That's it. Last Second Rescue is a momentum outlet, but I found in the 5 test games we did in the hotel room the night before. A lot of times people just don't let you keep the foundation unsealed or unfrozen or keep the momentum. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't a reliable way to spend it. They would either attack the foundation or attack your momentum, and it wasn't going through. But Beast Titan's Call was pretty reliable. At least pre-board games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just spend that momentum aggressively and on your turn.
Yeah, just getting it out of there before that Genkai attack that everyone's running could dump my momentum for big damage.
Oh yeah, absorb energy sphere strike. That one's pretty messed up.
Yeah, I had that happen to me once and then never again. I learned my lesson.
Nice.
But in long dragged out games where you see most of their deck, you're like, okay, they don't have it. I'll build a 2 momentum and then go for a win later.
Mm-hmm.
I just like the value this could provide. I like that it could hit Colossus Titan's destructive power and kind of recoup that foundation again. So again, a second big attack you could play that would let you net +1 on a foundation, which made it more likely on turns 2 and 3 that you could I'm saying turns 2 and 3, I mean attack turns 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
You could chain together more than one of these big attacks. So
yeah, fast building a foundation is a very powerful ability.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess next with Too Big to Contain is another one of your 4s in your deck.
It was. Now that I've looked at more of the cards in the game, I would definitely probably swap that out for Smiling Titan attack or Female Titan attack.
Mm-hmm.
But for what we were going for, since I was already hard committed to the debuilding strategy, this was just a fine 4 of that was easy access in the hotel room the night before.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, if I'm spending this much on an attack, I would like it to have higher than 6 base speed, but you do what you can.
Mm-hmm. And keeping up with that destruction game plan, Ravages of War is sort of a linchpin, I think, for these archetypes.
Yeah, this one was pretty fantastic. It was great every time I played it. The block effect didn't come into play too much, but it was probably when people on the fly figure out what you're doing and they want to build out past your speed to stop you from hitting them, that very often puts them low on cards in hand, and just being able to pluck one out can let you get in for all the damage. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of, if they keep too much in hand, they don't have the speed negation to stop you. If they play too much, you hit their hand, and then they're weak to that as well. So
yeah. And that's it for the 4 of attacks as we sort of close out with some of these 2-0s and 1-0s.
I would say for most of the 2s and 1-0s, they were good hits off of the Beast Titans call, since that was the big 4-0. These all shifted into pretty useful backsides to get into play. That's why the one Colossus Titan attack was there for, if you hit it on your first turn attack, it feels like the game's kind of over at that point, or at the very least, it makes it so they have to spend 1 or 2 attacks going at it just to keep it from getting that hand hate that everyone hates so much.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Armored Titan attacks was pretty good to block with. I used it more for that than anything else. And then it got a lot of use out of the ruin half of the card, so more of that foundation pressure. Not that I was flipping that many of their foundations, but very often the good cards in this game flip, so...
Yeah, your opponent's stage.
Yeah.
So with any of these 1-0s, would you perhaps want more of them in your list in a future iteration, or?
For this character, maybe not. I think Attack Titan attacks. Unexpected Outcomes I could see cutting. It was good a lot of the time, but it was also just too expensive some of the time too. Late game when they have a hand of 3 or 4 cards, it felt like it didn't do enough. Compared to Colossus Titan's destructive power anyway, but it was a 1-of tech. Sometimes it peeled their win condition out of their hand, and that felt pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever connected with their attack I was using against them, but as far as free value, I also probably never committed any foundations to play their attacks, because theirs were always so cheap compared to what I was throwing. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
And something I was curious about with this sort of this archetype of cards and attacks is, did you happen to run into any Sweeping Dagger decks in your tournament run? Because these big moves seem like a liability against an effect like that, where their 4 difficulty attack can steal your 8, 9, 10 diff enhance or blitz.
Yeah. So I think I did run into it once, but it took it was versus Jesse and Swiss, and he, I believe, took my Colossus Titan Destructive. Not Colossus Titan. He took my 10 cost.
10 diff. Yeah.
And I remember that because I think one of the commentators had come by and said, "Well, that's what you get for running 10 costs." I was like, "Yeah, fair enough. He got 2 momentum. I think he won that game too. But I think I was losing that game either way. But it definitely was like, oh no, can't change course now though.
Yeah. Would that card dissuade you from playing attacks like this, or?
Maybe. If I was metagaming against that card specifically, I would probably change my 10 card sideboard to transition to a different strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this deck in specific, maybe it's just weak to that. If you're going for this like really specific curve you're going to hit every single game, you need your attacks to be strong, and if you make your attacks weaker to compensate for one card, you'll probably just lose because your attacks are weaker.
Yeah, that makes sense.
At that point, you might probably just play a different deck that has more interaction from the foundation.
Mm-hmm. And then, I guess, kind of wrapping up with the attacks, just for the folks at home, what would your attack turns usually look like? So, how many attacks are you slinging in a turn? And yeah, sort of, what does an attacking turn look like typically on turns 2 and 3 for you?
Yeah, obviously, turn 1 is just one big haymaker and then build out. Turn 2, I'm trying to chain together 2 of them. Usually I want to lead with one of the more disruptive openers like Colossal Titans, Ravagers of War, or one I don't care if it gets blocked, including Too Big to Contain, which was just I am going to put speed on it. It's going to be a 9 speed, 7. They're not going to want to take it. This is usually going to tap down, it's anywhere from 2 to 4 foundations to block it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll blow up their best untapped foundation. And then that usually clears the way that the second attack is pretty guaranteed going to be hit. Ideally, it's a Beast Titans to go into, I believe it was Attack Titans attack. It was a very strong hit off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because then you would have a third attack that was very easy to land at that difficulty.
Yeah, it would just be on a 7 at that point, right?
Yeah, and the deck is primarily 6 checks, and at worst, there's only the 1 3 check in the whole deck. There's the Colossal Titans Destructive. Mm-hmm. Everything else is 4s, 5s, and 6s. And there's way more 6s than 5s, so...
Yeah. And I think it's a good segue to start talking about the foundations.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just, letting you go on how you want to approach this, if just 0 diffs to 2 diffs or sort of clumping stuff together.
Some of these are just there for the raw stats. Pro Hero and Syndicate are just good high and low. Blocks with 6 checks.
Mm-hmm.
Spirit Beast Poo, I think it's just kind of like a staple for this strategy. You need so many resources to string 2 attacks of this CMC or difficulty together in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So something that just builds for free is nice. A lot of these, like Dangerous Combatants, Curious About Quirks, Display of Might, these are just draw cards that also happen to be good checks.
Mm-hmm.
or blocks. You're not throwing a lot of attacks in a turn, but you do need to reliably see like 2 high impact attacks every turn to keep up. Otherwise, they will just outbuild you and kind of bury you in advantage eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Adapted autonomy, I thought was going to be more relevant just from playing the game in the past. I thought having main deck blockade and stuff would be relevant. It ended up not being very relevant, but I was still happy to swap out some of the original kind of blank foundations for something that did a little bit more.
Yeah, have a couple more options in your stage, right?
Yeah. Urameshi's Perseverance ended up being very great. Loved it every game I saw it.
Nice.
Having a momentum dump that could reuse the big attack that was relevant in the matchup was very nice. If they were low on hands, I had one opponent who was playing, I believe it was Jin from Attack on Titan, the one who has the mechanics for bouncing in and out of your momentum.
Yes, yeah. Jean Kristen or Jean Kristen, whatever his name is.
Yeah, I ended up playing, I think, 5 Ravages of War against him in that game, and it was because of Urameshi that I got the 5th. And
holy, yeah, keeping up his momentum and taxing his hand. That sounds awesome.
And then the 2 Dark Wards out of the side also kept him from building foundations into his momentum from the card pool. So that seemed like a very targeted game. So it just goes that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Keiko's Aid is great for the strategy. If you're already pushing your resources down, this pretty much guarantees they're not going to extend on you on their first attacking turn. They're probably going to stop right there and build. I should have run 4 of it.
It is a very good one.
Yeah. Sweet Satisfaction is garbage. It was a holdover from the first build. We were looking for more low blocks. It is a technically playable low block, but it was bad. It was real bad. I'm almost certain that no card in the deck fulfills the condition. It was the first 2 cards to come out every single game.
That's funny. When I was watching the stream coverage and looking up some of the decks, I saw your Smiling deck, and I was like, why is Sweet Satisfaction in here? What is he cooking? It's funny to hear just how bad it was.
No. There's no, like... No, it's so I have something to hit off of unexpected outcomes for the... No, it's bad. Don't do it.
All right, that's the easy cut then. Nice.
Yep. Swap those out. Sins of the Past. I think main decking 2 is right. I did a lot of fishbowling with the deck. Having any more than 2, the unique thing came up a lot. And on this deck, you really want to hit 4 to 5 foundations on that first build, so... it was too risky to main deck more, but I definitely sided in the full 4 in some matchups.
So can you speak to that? Because I was going to ask you, what would you usually be using the response to remove in the games that you played?
Tyrion Darrington, I believe that was the asset personality from the new set. Yeah, there are just some assets you needed to remove. Also, there's a small tech package out of the new set that allows you to stack techs on top of your deck and then remove to draw them. Some people were running very low win con cards, and being able to just pluck that out could disrupt their plan enough that you would get one more turn to win. So it was good.
Makes sense. And obviously the draw 2 on it, it's a good effect when you have the momentum to spend for it.
Yeah. Also another momentum outlet. I think I only used it for that once, but I was happy to have the first half because it felt like that was relevant. I know against, I think all of the the Darringtons I played, I ended up removing Eins from the discard pile so they couldn't refill their hand as fast.
Yeah.
That was helpful.
Yeah, Ein is very powerful for that deck.
Last Second Rescue is just great. Probably should just again, it got stopped almost every time, but at least it was something they had to stop every time. I don't know if that changed their play pattern specifically to play around it. But it's kind of momentum to not die. You can't ask for too much more from your foundation.
Yeah, it's a very powerful effect.
Yep. And defending the city, should probably always run 4 of those. It's just really, really good.
Did you play against a lot of stun effects or?
No, I would say it triggered its effect maybe 2 different opponents the whole run. But it was nice to have the option. And I think some people had like stun 1 on an attack or commit 1 that they just chose not to do because they're good players and they just didn't want to give me an extra foundation for next turn.
Yeah, makes sense.
And their attacks were probably fast enough. I wasn't blocking them if they got them high enough anyway. So,
and obviously the stats on it are good for your deck: the 6 check and the 1 high.
yes, yeah. So I was just thrilled to have a 6 check that did something with the top 2 cards.
Yeah.
So.
Makes sense. And then finally, starting to wrap up, we're hitting the sideboard.
Yep. So the Prideless Negotiations and Keiko's Aid were products of what we had in the room at the time. And on the way up, I had them explain the metagame to me. And they thought that Pony and Mirko were going to be way more popular than I ended up seeing that day. And I thought just having cards that could speed bump a go long strategy, like a long chain of attacks, was important to have. So, at least from what we had in the room.
Gotcha. And what would you usually side out for the Pridelesses and the Keikos? I know we talked about Sweet Satisfaction being bad, but what else would potentially come out of the deck?
Sweet Satisfaction, Adapted Anatomies were sometimes not great in the matchup. The deck ended up having a lot of draw power from the foundation, so I didn't mind trimming one of each of all the cards that draw cards as well. Last Rescue, if I saw that they were bringing in the Spirit no momentum cards, I would just go ahead and cut those, because if it's not going to happen, don't pretend like it will.
Yeah, and avoid the liability of having those big attacks in your momentum.
And if the deck was really defensive and it made the game go long, before we went to sideboard, I would just check their discard pile, measure out how many highs, mids, and lows they have, and just cut accordingly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And did you ever bring in Adaptable Anatomy?
I did once, but not for the effect, just because it was a mid.
Gotcha.
I played against, I think it was a Beauregard, who was running basically an all mid attack deck, and I found that I'd rather just have a playable block than a not playable one. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you already mentioned Sins of the Past.
Yep, it was good against them. It was good against Beauregard because apparently they had attacks that needed duplicates of themselves in your discard pile. I should have brought it in against Jesse playing a lottery deck, but we were just too busy having fun as friends that I completely forgot to sideboard against him. He didn't sideboard against me, so I didn't feel bad about it. So
yeah, it can always be fun to run into your friends in the tournament.
Yeah.
Just a quick clarify for anyone that's not familiar with the format. When he says lottery decks, he's referring to combined firepower style decks, right?
Yeah, he was playing a Vaxilin. Yeah.
The new Vax.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that does sound pretty good against firepower.
Yeah. I don't know. I never got a great hit off of it, but in theory, it would have been amazing.
Yeah. And then final card, we got Dark Ward. This one, I'm not so I don't know much about this one. So what was it in the games you played? What was it doing for you with its response?
So it was me looking at the cards we had available and saying, hey, this has the word cancel on it. My knowledge of the old game means this must be good. It has to be. I've never seen a cancel card that was bad. And then in between rounds, I was asking opponents, or asking the group we came with, I was like, hey, what would I actually use this against? And they were like, the Jin player that one, yeah, Gene Kristen.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, you could bring it in against that. I can tell you, he doesn't like it when you play that against him. I was like, okay. And then, sure enough, that was the only matchup I brought it in, but it did matter. So,
do you remember what card it was hitting in the like the name of it, or?
It was hitting the foundations that card pool removed themselves to.
Oh yes, with his face on it, right?
Yeah, so it stopped him from getting that first initial momentum going, and then Ravages of War would take care of all the ones that came after. So he was always at 0 or 1 for pretty much the whole game.
Gotcha. I think that card's reconsider, but I'm sure people can find it if they look up the Aeratune foundations that care about clearing themselves.
Yeah.
And with that, we've gone through the whole deck. Any shoutouts you want to give?
Definitely to Jesse from Roanoke. He was the one who originally built the deck, even though it's different from what it originally was. He's also the one who convinced me to fly, 3 hours across the country to come play. So,
yeah,
all love to him. And then, I just had a lot of great opponents. Everybody, the UFS community it was so nice that I didn't know what the cards did, but I knew enough about the game to ask for certain keyword effects, and people would just honestly answer.
Yeah, that's super nice.
You would not get that out of every card game. Like, I would throw a big attack, they had no cards in it, I go, okay, I'm not going to read your whole foundation lineup. Do you have attack resets? Do you have damage resets? Do you have a way to reduce the damage of this attack? And they were all very honest about it, and that helped speed up the game and make sure that I didn't go to time on anything. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that about the community, and I do expect it from Universus as opposed to some of the other card games that exist.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And then I also wanted to shout out Will or Arlon for getting us in contact, and the podcast he does, Forcheck's cast on Twitch.
Oh yeah, Jesse, Will, and George. The 2-hour car ride we had to the airport, I had them basically explain all the new mechanics of the game, plus the meta, plus everything I would be running into. So that was all extremely helpful. All the information ended up being relevant, except for look out for Grog, because none of us saw Grog. So.
Nice. So the hyperbolic time chamber on the way to the airport.
Yeah, it definitely helps. I'm also I'm not like completely new to this game. I think I've played in like 4 future events and done well in 3 of them, so it's not crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want to give people like weird expectations that you can just hand a deck to any cousin and he'll die. But
yeah, that makes sense. But thank you for coming on, talking to me through the deck, and sharing your experiences with it. It's a really cool deck. For everyone watching, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment your favorite thing about Smiling Titan, and also check out the MGLA website. But with that, we are signing off. Bye-bye.
Peace. Thank you.